Welcome, everyone, to this warm Tuesday evening in July. And as you know, we've been looking at similes of the Buddha, and we're parking for a short time looking at the similes of the Buddha regarding the 5 hindrances, the 5 obstacles that we invariably encounter when we encounter our own mind. I've heard teachers refer to these as psychic irritants or problematic emotions. Also a good description. And so quickly as a group, we'll just name these 5 problematic emotions. People can just say them out.
Restlessness.
Okay, restlessness and remorse. The 4th one.
Sense desires.
Sense desires, the 1st one.
Aversion.
Aversion, ill will, the 2nd one. 2 more.
Sloth and torpor.
Yes, sloth and torpor, these old words. Torpor. What is torpor? How do you spell that? More current translation would be dullness and drowsiness. So sense desire, this grasping, pulling towards, and aversion, ill will, this pushing away. Really the flip side of the same. It's just wanting and wanting something else, wanting something different. And then this dullness and drowsiness that comes over the mind and the body and the mood. And then the 4th hindrance, restlessness and remorse. And there's one more hindrance, doubt, number 5. And so last week, Sanghamitta went over Thich Nhat Hanh's peace treaty, this beautiful framing for dealing with anger, aversion, difficulty in relationship. And so the 3rd hindrance is dullness and drowsiness. I'm actually not going to speak about that tonight. Of all the 5 hindrances, it's the one that I have I struggle with the least, and have the least personal, I guess even credibility, I think, to speak about. But the 4th one, yes, I have a doctorate degree in restlessness and remorse, fully qualified to speak about this hindrance. Yes, restlessness and remorse. Two aspects. 2 aspects to the 3rd hindrance, this dullness and drowsiness, and 2 aspects to the 4th hindrance, this restlessness and remorse. And actually, the restlessness also has 2 parts. There can be quite a physical component and a mental emotion component. So next week, Bodhi Paula, more qualified, will speak about dullness and drowsiness as I'll be away. Restlessness and remorse. It can manifest quite coarsely and then much more subtly. And it's a hindrance that we will all encounter. And a lot of us encounter it a lot early on. And then as things start to settle down in meditation, it actually has a much more subtle form that we also will need to learn about and work with. So we live in a very restless culture, a lot of constant activity and constant distraction. And this both fuels, and it keeps going, fuels and channels our restlessness and remorse. And just, I always want to say, whenever speaking about the hindrances, that it's not personal. This is true of every single human mind. It's completely universal. universal, not personal. And it's very beautiful that the Buddha has given us this framework, which underscores the fact that it's not personal. He was speaking 2,500 years ago. It's the same. We have the same hindrances. The human mind fundamentally doesn't change that much. So it's very, very wonderful when we come to these beautiful teachings, when we come to the Buddha's teachings and get some light shed on these forces that are at work in our minds and in our hearts, in our lives, in our relationships. And the Buddha at one point says there are two qualities that are essential to make progress on the path. I find this teaching so useful. And the first is that we're observant. And so it's a little bit what we're talking about tonight, that we're observant. When we sit down to meditate, we're developing skills to observe what's there, observe what's in our mind, instead of just on to the next thing, multitasking and just staying so busy that the dust never settles. And the second quality that's essential for us as practitioners is honesty. So these are actually the qualities that are great for a scientist. And the Dalai Lama actually calls this the science of the mind, the Buddha's instructions, the Buddha's teachings. So we want to be observant and we want to be honest. And there's a lot of relief and refreshment when we just name it. Yeah, oof, I'm very restless. And sometimes even just having enough mindfulness to observe what's there, even when it's coarse, and be honest with ourselves about it. This is a step in the right direction. And this restlessness and remorse, the Buddha named this 2,500 years ago. It's not a product of our busy culture. It's a force in the mind. Our busy culture is because of all the restlessness that's in the human mind. It's not the other way around. French philosopher Pascal in the 1600s wrote, all humanity's problems stem from a person's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And I actually Googled, I was aware of that quote, but I couldn't remember it word for word, and came across this article in The Guardian from over 10 years ago that jumped off of that quote. And this article in The Guardian cited this experiment that was done, 42 participants in the experiment. And there weren't enough details actually in this Guardian article. So I don't know how long people were being observed and asked to sit alone in a room quietly. But in this room, there was a button. And so you could either, you weren't told, I don't think, but people obviously got bored and explored this button. So you could either sit there quietly, or you could sit there and play with this button. And this button would give you an electric shock. No joke. 2/3 of the men and a quarter of the women played with the button rather than sit quietly in a room alone. So this is how strong this force of restlessness is It's like we do have these wild elephants. We do have these untamed minds. And bless those experimental participants' hearts. Oh dear. Yeah. Yeah, this whole idea, I'd rather feel pain than not than just meet my mind. Restlessness and remorse. So the Pali words are udacha kukacha. Udacha kukacha. It sounds a bit like a flamingo dance, but it could be, and it can be restless. Udacha kukacha. Udacha is the restlessness part, and could well be translated as shake. This idea of motion, of movement, not stillness. And the kukacha part is remorse. And ku, this prefix in Pali is bad. Bad. And kacha is actually related to kamma, to the Pali word, Pali verb karoti, the doing. So it's something that's been done badly, and hence this remorse part. So I'll speak about restlessness first. And like I said, there is often a physical manifestation, and then there's also a mental manifestation. And in the course form, the physical manifestation is basically just very difficult to sit still. There's that restless leg syndrome, that there's just a lot of energy and almost vibration in the body. We've probably all had this experience. For me, I just need to think about my university days. I'd be sitting there and I just, I couldn't sit still. I would allow myself, this is before I was a practitioner, allow myself to get just so bored. And have you ever had that where you're sitting there and you've got your leg on a toe and you're like just bouncing your leg up and down, up and down, up and down? This is extreme restlessness in the body. And in meditation, it can be we're fidgeting a lot and we just can't sit still. I wanted to entitle the talk tonight, the R&R of restlessness and remorse, because the R&R, rest and relaxation, really the R&R, the real antidotes, the real antidote to restlessness is comfort, to somehow find comfort. And we really don't want to not be observing and not be honest about the restlessness when it's there. And sometimes it can be discouraging. I remember one time not long ago, I was on a long retreat with Beth Upton, and, it was wonderful. Things were getting quieter and more still. And I was not needing to sleep very much, and, quite a lot of continuity of mindfulness. And then this one morning, I woke up quite early and I was so restless, like my legs were restless. And initially I was so discouraged. And then I just, did the observe and be honest and just met it with acceptance, and that energy passed through. And this will happen for us in our meditation. Lots of times things are going very, very wonderfully, very beautifully, and then this difficulty arises, and lots of times it's just from some past habit energy, past karma, and here it is. It's ripening. So just to meet whatever's arising with care and acceptance. So this restlessness, when it's in the body and when it's in this physical form, one of so comfort is the antidote, the rest part of the rest and relax. Bit of a stretch, but the R&R goes great with restlessness and remorse. you can play with your perception. And this is very useful. When you're restless, the out breath becomes your very, very good friend. For dullness and drowsiness, the in breath it is soothing and soothing to dullness and drowsiness. It's more enlivening and invigorating. And for restlessness and remorse, the out breath becomes your friend. You're just breathing out whatever it is, the anxiety, the distraction, the fidgetiness, calming. And so you can heighten your awareness of the out breath, and you can also actively lengthen the out breath, because it really does have a soothing, calming effect. The out breath really becomes your friend. And another way that you can play with your perception is, you think about molecules bouncing around when there's all this shaking energy, this fidgetiness. And so you can try and play with the perception of the boundary of the body getting bigger, that there's just more space for this energy to bounce around. These are both very useful. And then so the physical and then the mental, the more coarse expression, manifestation of restlessness in the mental sphere is just a lot of persistent thinking or a lot of distracted thinking. In the suttas, in the Sutta Nipada, there's a verse 791, where the Buddha is using a beautiful simile to describe this restlessness in the mental sphere. And I think from this simile is where the expression monkey mind comes from, if you've ever heard that in meditation circles, this monkey mind, because the Buddha talks about the untrained mind, that it gets carried along by impulse. And those of us, that are in training and maybe beginning the training, the Buddha talks about they grab hold and let go. Grab hold and let go, grab hold and let go, like a monkey swinging, grasping and letting go of a branch. And I think this is where the expression of monkey mind comes from. So when there's persistent and distracted thoughts in the mind, the Buddha says one of the probably the biggest cause of this is not clear perception of the meditation object. So when the instructions to the attention, the instructions to the mind haven't been very clear, and when the meditation object is not very clear, very difficult for the mind, the attention, to stay with the meditation object. So if you're experiencing a lot of persistent thinking, or if you're experiencing the mind sliding off the meditation object often, one thing that you can do is try and make the meditation object more obvious to the attention, more obvious to the mind, more clear to the mind. So if your meditation object is the breath, one of the easiest ways to do this is to use counting. This is a method to use. You could use a mantra. Lots of times I'll breathe in love, just on the in breath, I'll use the mantra love. And then on the out breath, use the mantra ease. And just words that are meaningful to you. A lot of people use the mantra bu do. Bu do. It's very, very popular in Thailand. Bu do just means awakened. And I think the actual rhythm of that is, and people use it for walking meditation as well. Another thing you can do to make the breath more clear and more salient for the attention is to pay attention to the breath, maybe at the abdomen where there's very distinct movement. Sometimes you can do a lot of like whole body breathing. Ajahn Sona does this, and Bhikkhu Tanisro does this. Ajahn Nisabo does this. They all have very good guided meditations about working with the breath, doing things with the breath. Another very skillful means. And then as the meditation progresses, invariably, things start to get much more peaceful and calm and collected and settled. And then sometimes you'll have this experience in meditation where it's almost like when we're going to sleep at night sometimes. Have you ever had that feeling that you're letting go, and then this thing that can happen in meditation, that things are really settling, almost like you're not going to sleep at all. You're very aware, but you're relaxed the way that you are when you're going to sleep. And then boom, something pops you out. Like a good example is things are getting very, very quiet, and then you realize I'm not thinking, but and it all falls apart, right? Because it's like, well, I'm not thinking. Oh yeah, I am. That also is restlessness, much more subtle form of it. And Ajahn Brahm talks about this. Beth Upton certainly talks about this. As things get more and more calm and more quiet, it's just very what's happening is we're moving slowly but surely. We're moving away from the world that we live in, which is the world of the five senses. We're like going in, and lots of times many different things happen. Our perceptions of our body, of time, of space start to alter and can become quite unfamiliar. And the restlessness will appear either as excitement, like, whoa, wow, or fear, like, oh no, like what's happening? So this is that fourth hindrance of restlessness and remorse. No problem. The way through that period of meditation is just lots of repetition, where the unfamiliarness of some of the perceptions just become more familiar. Like you've now gone to this territory before, and you know that you didn't stop existing, or some of the things that we start to fear. It's just a matter of repeat, become familiar with this unfamiliar experience. And so we don't need to worry too much about the restlessness. It happens to everyone. I mean, that's why everyone laughed, right? Like, I'm not thinking, because we've all had that experience. So just repeat. So the second part of this hindrance, the remorse part, this bad done part, very, very clearly, this is a hindrance. We don't want to hang out in remorse. And this is something I think for myself, so confused about for a long time. Some of my own conditioning, I think some of my female conditioning, there was somehow I'm not going to say I enjoyed feeling badly about myself, but certainly hung out there a lot, thinking somehow that this showed how much I cared. I feel so terrible about this thing that I did because I care so much. And this is all very ignorant, confused thinking. The Buddha is so clear that remorse is a negative emotion. It's full of self. It's full of me. I'm like this. When am I going to learn? I never get it right. It's just full of me. And it's a hindrance to the beautiful, bright states of mind that the Buddha is pointing us to and inviting us into. So that being said, there is a prick of the conscience. There is a like, oof, that wasn't so good what I did. There is that's wholesome. And in the suttas, in the Buddha's teachings, it's this word hiri, Hiri in Pali. A good translation for hiri would be conscience, or I like compunction. It's a bit of an old word. I know sometimes it gets, I think Ajahn Tanisro translates it as moral concern. These are all good translations. This whole idea of conscience. So when we experience a regret, like, Bodhi-Paul and I were doing something yesterday, and then I said this thing, and then it's like, and it didn't reflect well on someone, and it was kind of like, yeah, it had that whole quality of like, I'm up here and they're down there, that whole thing that we do. And like, as soon as I said it, it's like, I so didn't need to say that, like at all. But you don't want to hang out with like, oh, when am I going to stop doing that? No, none of that. Just like right away to Bodhipala, I shouldn't have said that. No need. And I wish I hadn't. Done. Like we want it to be like that, like a car wash, You wash your car, then you don't just like get that mud that you got off the car and put it back on the car. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Done. Car's washed. This is very much what the Buddha is pointing us to. It's so beautiful in the suttas when anybody realizes, like I did yesterday, like, oh, I shouldn't, I didn't need to. That didn't come from a beautiful heart. It didn't come from a beautiful place. It wasn't uplifting. When anyone comes to the Buddha and says, like I said to Bodhipala yesterday, the Buddha always says, this is growth. This is growth. This is a good thing. This is growth. You are observant and you're honest, and we want to be that way about the things that we wish we had done differently, or wish that we hadn't done at all. Be observant, be honest, and then go through the car wash and just leave that on the ground and keep driving on the path. Hiri, very beautiful. The Buddha says this is a guardian, a bright guardian of humanity. Where are we when we don't have tender consciences that are doing their job? We know where we are. We're in a mess, and we see it all around. So, but don't hang out in remorse. Touch in there, learn, and like everything, impermanent and change and flow and done. And it's very beautiful when you experience this from someone, that that you make amends, you apologize for something, and then it's gone. Sanghamita is brilliant at this. It's just honestly, she doesn't even remember this stuff. It's that gone. It's just gone. She doesn't remember this thing last week. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I don't even remember. It's very beautiful, and you see it in her. There's this freshness and this lightness, just gone, done. And then to do this for ourselves, the Buddha is teaching us that. Yeah. So restlessness and remorse. So the beautiful simile that the Buddha gives for this, for when this hindrance, this fourth hindrance of restlessness and remorse has been observed and met with honesty and wise attention and has dissipated. Very beautiful. The simile that the Buddha gives, this is many times in the sutta. I just happen to be reading from the long discourses, the second sutta, Digha Nikaya 2, and I'm reading Bhante Sujato's translation. And I'll end with this. Suppose a person was a bond servant. They would not be their own master, but indentured to another, unable to go where they wish. But after some time, they'd be freed from servitude. They would be their own master, not indentured to another, an emancipated individual, able to go where they wish. Thinking about this, they'd be filled with joy and happiness. Yeah, the Buddha compares when we're under the attack, the oppression of restlessness and remorse. We're not our own master. It's jerking us around. You're meditating, and then all of a sudden next thing you know, you're defrosting the freezer. It's like, no, don't do that. Try to meet the restlessness and remorse. Don't let it jerk you around. Meet it with observing it, being honest, bringing wise attention, and trying as best you can with the capacity you have at that time to work with it and not have it be your master. Yeah. So I'll end there, and you have a few minutes. Please, any questions, comments, your own stories. When I was getting ready to write my master's thesis, my house was never, ever that clean. I mean, I was so distracted by doing everything except what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah.
I wish I'd met the Buddha before I did all my other stuff.
Yeah.
Like the amount of restlessness I used to have when I was doing my yoga practice and, disciple and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it was just fear of letting go, but it was every time I'd go and we get, learning things, and this energy would come up in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd plug that into fear, like, oh, what's that? I don't know what that is. And spent a lot of years doing that. But it's so refreshing to hear sort of a simple teaching from the Buddha. Was words are clear and they hit home so easily. It's really lovely to hear the suttas. And
Yes, Scott.
My favorite mantra when restlessness
Great.
is just on the out breath, just the word content.
Yeah.
Just say that quite a few times.
Yeah.
And that seems to pass the restlessness.
Yeah.
And we're on to the next entrance after that.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. It's comfort for restlessness and comfort and contentment. Yeah, these are the antidotes. Yeah, contentment, that's great. Content, good enough. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, lots of times with meditation, we're expecting, this great experience, or, and really meditation is just being great with the experience that you're having, whatever it is. Yeah. Scott, the other Scott.
Why did the Buddha group restlessness and remorse together? Because they're actually separate things.
Because I think when we've got a lot of remorse, it feeds the restlessness. That's my first pass at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Ideas about that? It's a good question.
That's great. Like, as soon as you said that the remorse feeds the restlessness, my mind went to they both create tremendous discomfort.
Yeah, agitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really about agitation. That it's like non-peaceful. Yeah, non-peaceful, and they yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sorry. I know that was a question that I had too. I'm like, well, why, how do they go together? It didn't make sense. And then in my mind, I was making up, well, maybe I'm feeling badly because I'm actually not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, being distracted, being restless. But it's been, yeah, I see it differently now. They're both just, yeah, that feeding that lack of comfort.
Lack of comfort, lack of contentment. Yeah, and the dullness and the drowsiness are like not enough energy in the system, and then the restlessness and the remorse are just like agitation, too much uh, uh, energy in the mind and in the body. And this is the big learning curve that we're all on, is bringing things into balance. There's these 5 spiritual faculties, and these are what are doing the meditation, these 5 spiritual faculties. And when you have an experience where it's smooth and it's easeful, that's because those 5 faculties have come into balance. And invariably they're going to go out of balance again. But this is what we're learning. We're learning it's a balancing act. And so these really coarse hindrances of, sense desire and anger and ill will, when they've been, work with quite a bit, then it's this dullness and drowsiness and this restlessness and remorse, which really are about bringing things into balance. And when I've been on retreat and watched people that are getting into much deeper meditation, there's a whole period where, the sense desire and the aversion are they're really, there's a lot of sense restraint and a lot of mindfulness but then you go through this period where it'll be dullness and drowsiness and restless and remorse that you have to bring into balance. Yeah.
It's almost like one feeds off the other sometimes, like, you know, you experience restlessness, but now all of a sudden you're into
Exactly.
something.
Yeah, and it's just because it's about
You're
balance.
into craving not to be restless.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
And then
oh yeah. And restlessness and remorse are full of craving.
you start to get more relaxed and start getting drowsy. after
Yeah,
you work on that.
Yeah, exactly.
They all come at you in multi-hundreds attacks.
Yeah. This first, Beth Upton talks about, there's chapter 1 of our meditation, and it can be very, very long. And it's 80% of the work we do in meditation. And that is working with these 5 hindrances. And that's what, Scott's doing this a lot. And that's why he knows. He observant and honest. Yeah, we want to get to know these hindrances and to understand them.
Do all cultures and people in this world experience this, do you think, the same way?
I don't know that
Same
they
level?
experience the same way, but they certainly experience them. Certainly.
Yeah.
No question. Absolutely universal. Absolutely.
Are there certain cultures that don't experience it to the same level?
Yeah, I would imagine. I think even some of this stuff is climate dependent.
Oh,
Seriously, I mean, I'm not an anthropologist, but even, qualities like hospitality, you can look at different climates, and a more northern climate tends to not have as much hospitality. I mean, you think of Italians, come eat, yeah. So I would imagine there are many factors. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that certain cultures are more aversive. Certain cultures are more sensual. I mean, it's broad, very broad brush. I lived in Miami for a time. Very, very sensual. Very. The most sensual place I've ever lived. Yeah. The way that people dress, the way that people moved. Yeah. Yeah. I was a musician at the time, and I remember I had this one gig. It was outrageous. We had to pretend we were playing. They just hired us for a music video of this some Cuban star, and she was they were filming her. We were right on the ocean, and they were filming her from a helicopter. She was barely dressed, she's singing away, and we're all pretending to play. And we were there for hours. It was just, there's no need for me to share that, but it was just different, than other places. I'd moved from Toronto. It's a little bit straighter, a bit more uptight. Yeah. I've never been paid so much to not play. Talk about restless. It was so boring, like hours and hours and hours just sitting there. Do it again. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Very much a tangent. Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll end with the Brahma Vihara of equanimity. Okay. So think of a neutral person, someone that you don't have strong feelings about. And we'll say these phrases. All beings are owners of their karma. Their happiness and unhappiness depend upon their actions, not upon my wishes for them. I will care for them as suffering human beings, but cannot keep them from suffering. I wish them true happiness, but cannot make their choices for them. Think of someone who's been really supportive of you and direct the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I will care for you as a suffering human being, but cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but cannot make your choices for you. Think of a friend, and if the person that you were already thinking of is a friend, think of a different friend and direct the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. Yet I will care for you as a suffering human being, but cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but cannot make your choices for you. Think of a difficult person and direct the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I will care for you as a suffering human being, but cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but cannot make your choices for them. And now direct these phrases to yourself. I am the owner of my karma. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not on my wishes or hopes. I care for myself, and I'm determined to follow the path of peace. I wish myself happiness and am determined to make skillful choices. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe.